have been weird this year, and if you're anything like me, you might be wondering, how can I celebrate the holidays without changing anything about my lifestyle? So I found a cosplay that is red, green, and elven for the festive season, bringing isolation chic into my home and heart. So I went into my backlog and dug up Tiki from Fire Emblem Awakening. So to be completely honest, this didn't end up being a one-day build. I bit off a little more than I could chew. And the first day I only had a half day, so I got the patterning and most of the sewing done for the dress and the boot covers. So if you are looking to complete this in one day, keep in mind that you're going to be crunching hard for probably 12-16 hours rather than a casual 6 to 8. The rest of it took 1 or 2 hours a night for the rest of the week. And I'm not sure if that was counting the wig, because wig time is just a whole other thing to me. I don't know why. A couple of years ago, I picked up this really beautiful sculpt from the Dangerous Ladies for Tiki's tiara. And at the time, it was mostly an impulse, like, I really want to own this. But it's about time that I actually make the cosplay to go with it. They included 2 different gems. I'm assuming one goes with her Fire Emblem Awakening sculpt and the other one is for either heroes or... I don't know what Fire Emblem came before Awakening, because that's where I jumped on the train. I'm building the Awakening build, which is very close to the heroes build, except the which red is dark and which red is light is reversed. Let's get started.
The easiest way to make a pattern for stretch fabric is to use clothing that already fits you. Since I'm using jersey and the bodice of Tiki's dress is fitted, this bodycon dress should work well as a base. Since the sides are slit, I can use pins to indicate how high the slit should come on my body, as well as noting how far out the decoration at the bottom should go. After removing the garment, I fold it in half along the center and align the fold to the edge of my pattern paper. Then I carefully trace along the outline, noting where my pins hit. The front and back are very similar in this dress, but my front needs a deep V-neck. With the main shapes decided, it's time to draft in the decorative details, starting with the corner flaps. I also freehand her chest design with mixed results. After cutting out my pattern, I can hold it up to me and get a feel for placement.
I drew these on way too high because this is my waist marker. They need to start at my hip marker, which was down here, but the overall curve is fine. So I went through my fabrics and pulled out all of my stretchy reds and I think all of my pinks. I don't actually have very many left. So I've got these that were originally for Utena short. This leftover from Steampunk Marceline. It's got like a really nice shimmer to it, kind of a weird cutoff piece. Got peach from my Cindy bikini, and this lovely like pinker red that was going to be for a normal wear dress, and then I realized that I basically just wanted a copy of a dress I already had that was already red. I think this is a different cutoff of the same piece. And then this left over from my Edelgard gloves. The pinks I'm less happy with. I have like a polka dot seersucker. I have a very shiny pink from very old Rapunzel cosplay. Have barely any color to it, jersey pink. Or I have the remains of the Tokyo Mew Mew pink. And I'm not really loving any of these, but tomorrow I might get to do a fabric run.
After deciding on the red jersey fabric, I place my pattern on the fold and sprinkle it with weights. This keeps the pattern in place while I cut around it. My pattern was too short, but the rest of the skirt is rectangular, so I just cut it to the end of my piece. Then I repeat for the back. With my pattern transferred to fabric, it's safe to cut it up. To start, I cut the collar and chest details and transfer them to my darker red accent fabric. To join the collar, I'm sewing it to the inside, so when I flip it over, the seam is sealed. It takes a bit more effort to lay flat though, so I clip it down and top stitch it in place. I also pin the far edges flat to avoid puckering later. For the applique, I'm using a zigzag stitch. Since many Awakening designs have visible stitching, I felt this leaned into the roughly hewn, handmade look. These other applique pieces had me going back and forth between what looked accurate and what looked flattering, and eventually I realized I wouldn't be happy either way and pinned and sewed them down. The applique is done, so time to make this a dress! I clip it together at the sides, sew it down to the slit, then clip and sew the straps. Technically it's a dress now! The waist is too loose and my length is far too long, but my slits are at a good level. While it's on, I can mark where it needs taken in as well as where I want to hem it. This way I don't cut it too short by mistake. With the dress back off, I fold it over to check if the hem will be symmetrical, then trim off the excess. To make the most of my fabric, I use the offcuts of my socks for the arcs at the corners of the skirt. So I'm going to line the portion of them within the arc. This also lets me hide the hems of the outside of the arc easily and add more dimension to the applique. Once lining and arc are sewn together, I flip them right side out, pin down the seam, then carefully turn and pin the remaining raw edges of the arc. With the arcs assembled, I can sew them to the edges of my flaps. Right side of flap to wrong side of dress, then fold over to sandwich the seam. Finally, I stitch down the arc applique. The last step for this dress is to finish the remaining seams at the armholes, collar, and hem. Trying it on again, it's still loose, but I also don't want it to cling.
Okay, so the last part is the lacing on the sides, and I put it off for a long time because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do eyelets or just kind of cross this over and tack it down at the sides. Originally, I was going to use some shoelaces that I already have, but they are so fluorescent, and since I picked up a little fabric for this project anyway, I thought I'd get some. It's already been like folded down. The Fire Emblem Awakening art differs between the sprite and the concept art. In the concept art, she only has 4 stitches across the side, but there are 6 in the game sprite. But you don't often see full body of the game sprite, and I think 4 will probably fit better. But I'm just going to tack some things down and see how they look, and we'll go from there. And looking at the refs, it should be eyelets, so we're going to take this off and do that.
To place my eyelets, I mark both sides of a ruler to ensure the distance apart will be even in both directions. Next, I use 2 awls, one small one followed by a larger one to create holes. After each is created, I add an eyelet and its backing, and press them shut with setting pliers. This is harder to do the further into your fabric the hole is, but is much quieter than hammering them shut, and you won't wake up your neighbors at 3 AM the night before con. The lacing is pretty thick, so to help feed it through, I wrap the end in tape to create a needle-like taper. Then I can lace them loosely, like sneakers you tied once and will slide on forevermore. There's no visible bows or knots, so I cut the ends and stitch them to the inside of the dress.
There's a few things I'm not making for this video because I already have them in my possession. Gloves, thigh highs. I'm also reusing the Officer Jenny pumps and tiara, and the elf ears are just because who doesn't want to be a beautiful elven princess in their free time?
On to boot covers. Tiki has over-the-knee boots with flaps, as well as thigh highs, so it's important to make sure all of these will fit between the hem of the dress and the tops of my knees. The easiest way to tell is to mark where each should hit on a pair of tights or leggings, especially with a skirt of similar length. I also take note of how short my leggings are, as I'll be using them as part of my pattern. Since I only have this cut of fabric, placement is important to make sure I can fit all of my pieces. Folding the fabric twice means I only need to cut once for 4 pieces. For the feet, I'm using a sock, but my socks stretch more than my other clothing, so I'm also taking measurements to see how much to increase the pattern by. Then I can transfer the measurements over the sock onto my pattern and cut out my stocking shape. With the main pieces cut, I clip my pieces together. Stretch fabric can sometimes move through the machine unevenly, so holding pieces together is extra important here. Sew the seams. Then, with tube and sock assembled, I turn the sock right side out and insert it into the tube, making sure the back seams align. Clip in place, then sew. The flaps for the boots are made from what I trimmed off the bottom of my dress, once it's been squared off. It's only 2 layers though, so I need to cut 2 more for my second piece of fabric. With all 4 panels cut, I sew 3 sides of each pair together, leaving open one of the long seams to join to the boots. After the rectangles are turned right side out, I sew one side to the boots, then tuck the other side in, sandwiching the seam and boot fabric between the cuffs. Complete! And this is what I got done on day 1.
After completing the dress and the boots, I ran into some battery trouble and decided to just stop for the night. I'm not sure it counts as a de-stash anymore because earlier today I went to a fabric store to pick up white for another cosplay and also found a pink that was just nicer than the Tokyo Mew Mew fabric, and like, I was this close to using the seersucker, but it was not the right choice. So I think this will be better. So forgive me, but we're on to part 2 of day 1.
Tiki's cape is a gathered rectangle, but I want to get a feel for the draping before I cut my good fabric. This scrap is just a bit too narrow folded over. Even when fabric is specifically purchased for a cosplay, I hate wasting material, so I measure frequently and weigh my positioning options. Along with the cape's main rectangle, I'll need to cut out wrist cuffs and 2 layers for a collar. The wrist cuffs are additional rectangles, slightly wider than my wrist circumference and twice as high as needed, so I can fold them over and have one less seam. When sewing the other 3 sides together, I leave a gap around the center to turn them right side out. Then top stitch over all of the seams. To close, I sew 2 short sides together about halfway. My collar piece was created by trial and error, possibly for Edelgard or maybe Moira, but it's basically 2 arcs. One is the length you need your neck opening, the other is the length of your desired collar. I flattened the back of mine for ease of wearing with wigs. Tiki's collar is stiff, so I have to iron on interfacing to each side. Her collar is white, and since I'm using the wrong side of the fabric for her inner cape, I need to use it here as well. Which means the interfacing goes on the pink side, as do the seams. Sew, flip, clip, and sew along the seams to keep it flat. I also add some floral wire to help off her shape. For the body of the cape, I double fold the sides to hide the raw edges. I also double fold, but with a substantial hem, for the top edge, to give more volume to the folds. This'll do. I also test the collar position and pin it in place. Normally a cape like this would drape at the back, but since I need the collar to join, I fold the excess into a box pleat. With everything in place, I can add the finishing details. A bottom hem, casing the collar's raw edge, and the white cape closure, which will be made from a rectangle of the fabric's offside. For the test, it's held in place with a single pin, but I'll hand sew snap-on later. The last pink piece is the hip sash. I need to find my hip width, then add enough extra for a large bow and tail on each side. Since that's more than my measuring tape, it takes a bit of guesswork. In the end, it took 2 strips of fabric joined and hemmed. The gold spool-like shape at the end is made from scraps of gold upholstery vinyl. One large rectangle to cover the whole shape, and a narrower one at each end for the raised detail. Once an end of fabric is gathered, the gold is wrapped around and hand-stitched in place.
So it's already really smooth. There's only a bit of an edge at the back where you won't see it, and there's maybe like one little bit to sand off, but I should mostly, maybe they were sanded down too, but it's basically ready to paint already.
The imperfections are minor, so I'm able to sand them down with just a nail file. It's ready to paint! My setup is just some old moving boxes, but I don't want to get spray paint on my tablet, so just imagine this step. Wow, you imagined that so well! On top of glove cuffs, Tiki wears bracers, so I need to pattern my forearm. With that done, I cut it out as well as space for closures from my roll of gold upholstery vinyl. I also cut strips to the length of the top edge to use like bias tape, and another for her choker. The most time-consuming step of this whole cosplay is drawing, then cutting all these pentagonal shapes, but at least I can cheat and trace the first one onto its partner. For the green gem-like shape, I'm layering glitter spandex by spray gluing my vinyl to it. Then leave it with the weight on top overnight, or if you're crunching to get this out, while you go eat a meal or at least rehydrate. I still have dreams of Rydia for YetiCon, so I'm trying not to use too much of this fabric. And with the spray glue, I can cut exactly what I need. The upper edge has a decorative lip, so I fit some gold accented trim into the bias tape and clip both in place. With that sewn down, I can test the fit. The choker uses the same method of folding in trim, but I fold both edges forward so it's smooth and soft on my neck. Then I hand sew a snap closure. Getting back to the tiara, I paint the gem back with nail polish for extra shine. Normally I use gem tack or barge to add resin gems, but usually they're mounted on fabric or foam. Since these are both resin, I'm gonna try Weld Bond.
So the last thing left is the wig. It has some red ribbon on it around the ponytail, so I'll be using the last of Goldfish Sakura and some jade green wigs from Arta. This one's a Vivian, and then I have the ponytail clip, just like the long straight one. Really cute wig. Because Tiki's got a lot of hair kind of just around, I opted for this rather than a straight up ponytail. And I think I'll be able to make it work. Like, right out of the bag. This is just a really cute style. Since this is going to be a ponytail, I need to be sure it's going to fit my own head. Beauteous big face. But I also have to be sure not to get my own hair in it, especially if I'm doing weird colored wigs. The year I cut my aqua wig, I also gave myself bangs by mistake. Kind of a mess so far. The bangs will need styled before I actually wear it. And then what I did with my time skip Hilda wig is I made two ponytails. The first one goes at the top and creates the illusion that the ponytail is up, and the second one was a low ponytail that I then tucked underneath, so that way there wasn't the hair in the way, but it gives the illusion without having to sew in wefts or anything. The high ponytail also gives something for the clip to hook into a little better, so you don't have to like grab your scalp through the netting. And then hopefully when I have the real clip that'll hide some of that, but I can't see the back of my head to know how well it turned out. But here's the basic idea. And sometimes the little elastic bit sticking out just like try and tuck it in the clips. So now it looks like a proper ponytail wig. And basically, just going to figure out how much I need of the ribbon. Probably what I'll do is I'll stitch the ends to the mesh, but I'm not going to cut it yet in case it ends up being a different size. Okay, so the starting end, it's stitch probably kind of diagonally so it can wrap around. I put it on through one side and the other. So let's make sure this clips. Hopefully I can curl this up some, because Tiki has a few layers in her ponytail, and this isn't terribly thick, so I don't want to cut too many layers if I don't have to. But I think, again, once I do the bangs, this should be wearable. I planned to make the tiara wearable by hot gluing some of these clips on, but they're both a little too big to angle and hide, a very awkward angle to clip in, and I don't currently have any small combs. So I was stressing out about what I could actually use to join the tiara, and then I remembered for my Perona cosplay, I keep the crown on with this under the wig, and this is basically, if you can see the outline, there's a hard drive magnet sandwiched in between two pieces of soft fleece just to keep it from hurting my head too much. And I just stick it usually under the wig cap, so like against my head I'll put on the wig cap and then I'll put on the wig, and it's strong enough that it keeps this on in place most of the time. It's a little easier when it's more up, but works pretty well. And on the prop itself, it's just using a tin can. Change is magnetic. So I've got a nickel and a dime, and 15 cents seems like a worthwhile investment. So if you pick the proper side of the hard drive magnet, it sticks really good. The other side is protected so things won't stick. So when you're putting this against your head, I guess just decide what side is up before you put all your wig on. But I should be able to glue these guys to here in a way that you won't be able to see them. And then I should be able to just snap this on when I wear her. I also keep looking at this ponytail clip, and it is way too long. All this extra to potentially weft, but I don't have that level of energy at this time. So now it's a lot shorter, which will make it much easier to wear, but it doesn't have a lot of volume even after playing with it like this for a while. So I'm going to start teasing it. All my wefts are assembled. I'm going to just kind of place them throughout the ponytail to get more of the choppy feel. So like between here and the bottom of that. But this is going to be very difficult to stitch in like this, so I'm going to do that off camera. So the coins worked, and I can just kind of adjust my emblem on the fly, and it sticks. I can slide it right off. The coin sticked. I think the coin stuck. My magnets are too strong. I also didn't have the garter clips, which means I am constantly pulling these up or pulling these down. So just imagine that they're clipped from here to here and pinned probably to the top of the Spanx. Also, you'll want to wear Spanx probably because the slit goes way up here, well above any underwear lines, and the bow does not stay in place well enough to really counter that. In terms of being a de-stash, this was also a failure because I took a square of fabric about this big, maybe, kind of the size of a t-shirt, and purchased this and was left with this. So now it's just here. It's just in my home. A failure. So now that you know, I've been a failure on 2 counts. First, not completing this in 1 day, and 2, not de-stashing. There is one third category in which I have succeeded, and that is holiday cheer. Okay, I need hands for this. And now for the fun parts. He is my only pin, therefore he is the tree topper. So if the holidays have got you down, try working on something that you've always wanted to do but just kept putting off, especially if it's something that no one else cares about, because now is the time to just do something for you that brings joy into your own life. Turn your eat-a-bag that's not going out anywhere into a Christmas tree so you can look at all your children and husbandos and just bring some light into this dark time. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. I've got a few bigger projects in the works. Probably the first one I'll release is Tokyo Mew Mew. I got like 90% of it done, and then my 3D printer died on the prop, the big heart bow strawberry bell. So I consider that kind of essential. Every holiday season I end up doing something kind of bigger and sparkly, and that started out because I'd heard about Katsucon but was never able to go to Katsucon, so I'm like, I will bring my own Katsucon to Toronto, and I will just be the most sparkly thing ever. And then I got a little older, more financially independent, and I could go to Katsucon, so I would spend my holiday working on a big fancy project for that. And as far, like, there's no physical Katsucon coming up for 2021, so it's back to bringing my own sparkle game, and I'm debating between shiny chariot, but like the very shiniest chariot, or another Sekaizo design. So maybe vote in the comments if there's one of those in particular you'd like to see. I guess I'm looking for ideas for new shorter things because I'm going through a lot of my own bucket list at this point. I don't speak to humans anymore, so this is really hard for me actually. Who's your favorite Fire Emblem, and can you tell I started with Black Eagles?